All right, so a quick systems check. RFID is the quiet backbone of tap and go logistics. Badges, inventory stickers, library books, the whole tricorder meets barcode vibe. Under the hood, most tags we encounter in retail and access control are passive. They've got no battery. They harvest energy from the reader's field and respond with just enough compute to be useful, and sometimes just enough to be dangerous. That power budget is why early systems shipped with minimal crypto and simple state machines. Great for price points, not so great for adversarial settings. NIST flagged that trade off years ago, and the guidance hasn't aged out. Treat RFID as a system, tag, reader, backend, and threat model across all three links, not just the sticker on the box. Standards wise, you'll hear Gen 2 a lot. That's GS1 EPC Global Class 1 Gen 2. The UHF air interference you see in modern supply chains, Gen 2 was a big step up from Gen 1 on performance and basic controls. And later, Gen 2 V2 revision added stronger mutual authentication and privacy features. So tags aren't trivially trackable between stores or, across the food court at the mall. Think of V2 as the director's cut that finally ships with the deleted security scenes. Because radio is a broadcast medium, these systems inherit classic RF problems. Anyone who can power on a reader or eavesdrop in the air can potentially skim, relay, or replay traffic. In other words, it's like Bluetooth from the early 2000s. Works like magic until a curious neighbor with a Yagi antenna decides to roleplay as your point of sale. We've got to map the attacks though. So unauthorized tag access, rogue readers. In retail, a gray market competitor can quietly walk your aisles with a suitcase reader and build a live inventory just from the RF exhaust. No staff login required. That's classic skimmy. Our mitigations here enforce reader authentication, rotate or disable tag identifiers after sale, untraceable modes, and use access kill passwords correctly and make sure they're not factory defaults. Also, push policy and guardrails to the back end. Alarm on anomalous reader IDs, time of day, location constraints, and rate limits so your data Doppler doesn't look like a flash running QC. Are fake tags, so cloning and substitution. Counterfeiters love weakly authenticated tags. Copy the memory, print a new label, and suddenly a $20 knockoff masquerades as a $200 part. That corrupts your inventory, warranty, and safety chains. Controls here are cryptographic challenge response at the tag. Again, that Gen 2 V2 helps. Signed provenance records and back end analytics that reconcile tag identity with context. Treat the tag like a passport plus a travel history. Don't trust cover alone. We've also got our eavesdropping. If your protocol shouts in plain text, a bystander can listen. HF and UHF differ in channel characteristics, but the core risk stands. A third party harvested ID then tracks people or assets between sites. Practical demos have captured transactions and used them for replay and relay. Our mitigation here would be encrypt and authenticate sessions where supported, minimize data exposure at the RF layer, and leverage hygiene, power control, shielding at portals, and physical layout to shrink the listening radius. Think of it as turning your RFID portal from a Times Square billboard into a hushed library voice. Think of your WLAN like Avengers HQ. Only vetted heroes get badges. A rogue access point is the random guy in a cape. who wanders in and opens a side door to your network. In policy terms, it's an AP in your RF space that isn't under your control, or worse, is plugged into your wire. Modern WLANs spot these by running a wireless intrusion detection prevention system, so your WIDs and WIPs, that uses sensors, plugs a central brain to a monitor 802.11, traffic 24/7, geolocate devices, and raise the right alarms. Dedicated sensors are preferred for continuous coverage. APs can also flip into monitor modes to scan when needed. Wireless device probe, a client radio in monitor mode, the Wi-Fi equivalent of wired promiscuous mode, sniffs management data frames to inventory beacons, SSIDs, and behaviors. Great for ad hoc or spot surveys, less ideal for full coverage. Your desktop probe, a workstation with a capture cable NIC that continuously sniffs a fixed area. Think of security camera or RF in wiring closet or sock pod. This essentially is the device probe with a fixed duty placement. Your access point probe. Approved APs do off channel scanning or run as air monitor mode sensors between serving clients, handy for broad coverage without extra hardware. Vendors also add tricks like rogue location, discovery protocol RLDP to test if a spotted SSID is on your wire. Your dedicated probe. Purpose-built sensors that don't serve clients, so they scan full-time across channels and bands. The gold standard for compliance areas. High-threat floors, labs, and data centers. But what happens after suspicious hits? Sensors forward observations to controller managers, which correlate MAC RSSI channel and wired discovery to classify friendly external neighbor or true rogue on the wire. Policy then drives response, alert only or active containment. Be explicit that the containment is policy graded and jurisdiction aware. On a traditional wired network, we draw a bright line around our castle. One choke point, one moat, one drawbridge. That's the hard edge. Firewall at the perimeter, policy at the core. The moment we add Wi Fi, that crisp line smudges into blurred edges because radio doesn't stop at the drywall. Think of it like putting the Death Star's thermal exhaust port on broadcast, convenient airflow, awkward risk. If that RF fog, five families of attacks matter in practice: rogue APs, evil twins, interception, replay, and DOS. Treat wireless LAN as a lifecycle control design, configure, and monitor, not a one and done checkbox. Our NIST SP 800 153 is the baseline playbook here. Now, the real world. Network blurred edge. Corporate laptops, bring your own device phones, Internet of Things widgets, and attackers are all inside that RF bubble. A nearby laptop can beacon a fake SSID or listen from the parking lot, and there's no cable to trace. That's why modern programs deploy wireless, IDS and IPS sensors, and do continuous classification. Is the radio ours, a neighbor, or a true rogue on the wire? Two high yield threats to internalize are rogue access point, an unauthorized access point physically or logically tied to our LAN, sometimes by the well meaning employee, sometimes by an attacker. It bypasses onboarding and can sit behind the firewall, which is why detection correlates RF sightings with wired presence. If it's on our switch port, it's a rogue, not just neighbor noise. Think of it as a hidden side door propped open with a coffee cup. Our evil twin, that's a look alike SSID controlled by the attacker. Users connect to the corporate Wi Fi guest. That isn't ours. The adversary then proxies, phishes, or forces downgrade to weak authentication. It's the Loki variant of APs, indistinguishable at a glance, malicious in intention. Visually, this is how both show up in an enterprise. A rogue AP funnels traffic straight into your LAN. An evil twin sits off net and lures clients to connect so the attacker can man in the middle, harvest credentials, or steer them to phishing portals. Good whips platforms classify radios, our rogue versus neighbor, and locate them, and where policy and law allow, contain them. There are two more radio native problems. Intercepting wireless data. So if an SSID uses a weak or misconfigured security, over the air capture can reveal sensitive metadata or context. The fix is posture, not hope. Mandate WPA2 Enterprise, WPA3 Enterprise, and enforce certificate validation, as well as minimize sensitive data at the radio frequency layer. Keep it server side. NIST calls out hardened configs and continuous monitoring as table stakes. Our wireless replay attacks capture a valid exchange, replay it to gain an edge. The canonical example is old WEP, where replays accelerate key recovery. More generally, replay meaning taking frames from one context and reusing them later. Modern protections include per session keys and management frame protection that add integrity checks and replay protection to robust management frames. Replay is the Wi Fi equivalent of Doctor Strange looping the same scene until it finally breaks you. PMF is the spell that notices the loop and shuts it down. Finally, everybody's favorite denial of service in Wi Fi comes in three flavors you should be able to explain on a whiteboard. RF jamming, blast noise so legitimate signals can't get a word in. It's crude but effective and well documented in literature. Detection looks like high energy, low decode. Mitigation is physical, security, ops plus spectrum analysis. Are spoofed management control frames, deauthentication or disassociation floods, or abusing the duration nav field to reserve the channel constantly. PMF helps by authenticating key management frames without it. A cheap radio can punt clients off your wireless LAN or starve airtime. This is the classic trip everyone in the hallway so no one reaches the door move. Duration value manipulation. Let's craft RTS and CTS with an exaggerated duration so well behaved stations defer forever. This is textbook academic attack and still useful to discuss in threat modeling for high assurance spaces.